Hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Tech Talk with Ethan. And today I'm here with Debbie Miller, who has done props and has been on a few national tours. Thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Well, I was the first independent female that worked for a merchandising company touring around the U.S. selling merchandise.
Wow, that's a big deal, yeah? The first female?
Yes, otherwise it was a husband-wife team, but they had never hired an independent female before.
That's interesting. So you were the head of the merch department for a few national tours.
Yes. I started out actually in the hotel industry, became a special liaison to theater groups, and the theater groups would come and go. I wound up dating a couple of musicians, and they would come and leave, and I decided I wanted to come and leave, not be the one left behind. So as I tell people, I couldn't sing, couldn't act, couldn't dance, couldn't get a union card, but I could sell t-shirts.
And that's all it takes, right? Like, to get started, you do this one thing and you build from that.
So, yes, I started out doing what they called bus and trucks back then. We actually had a truck, a 30-foot box truck that the merchandise was in, and we would roll the cases on and off the truck, and then we would drive the truck from city to city.
Okay. And that was to be you take the merch and then you drive to the city and then go to each city from there.
Yes, we would go to each city from there. Monday was our only day off. We moved every week. Occasionally we got a city where it was a bigger audience, so we would stay for 2 weeks, which was a sheer delight because then we actually got a day off. Otherwise, you were working the show 6 days a week and traveling on the 7th.
Wow, that's crazy. There's like so much that was involved there. How'd you get so you got involved through hotel and then worked your way up to that position?
Well, I worked in hotel, and as I said, I dated a musician.
Okay.
I found out the name of the merchandising company, and when they came to town, I called. They were based in New York. I called and kept trying to get on. Les Mis came through St. Louis, which is where I'm originally from, in 1989. And I did what they called a run-through. I sold programs before the show, and then I sold merchandise at a booth during intermission so they could see how I did. And then those guys reported back to the New York office. I didn't get hired until 1991, 2 years later.
Okay. Got it. What tours have you done with merch or selling merch?
I've done Buddy the Buddy Holly Story, Phantom of the Opera, Miss Saigon, Sunset Boulevard, Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, Chicago the Musical, Annie Get Your Gun, and Mamma Mia. Also Chorus Line. So
that's quite a few shows there. Do you have a favorite show that you've done?
Joseph was my favorite. It was just a great show, great group of people. So
exactly.
I think last year was the 25th anniversary of Joseph.
Okay, nice. So it's been around for 25. That show's been around for 25 years.
Well, the tour started 25 years ago.
Okay,
but
got it. See, yeah. Tour.
Yes.
There we go.
So, but unfortunately, that tour only lasted a year and a half.
Okay, got it.
I spent the longest amount of time on Mamma Mia. I did 2 years of Mamma Mia touring, and then my boss called and said, I got an offer you can't refuse. How'd you like to move to Vegas? So in 2003, I moved to Vegas to open Mamma Mia, and we didn't know how long the show would last. If it would last 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. The show wound up lasting 6 years.
Wow, that's that. Oh, that and is also is that like a normal run for like it depends, right? Like how long a show runs.
Typically, shows in Vegas did not last that long.
Okay.
Also, our show was the only one that was originally done in its full entirety. We paved the way for Jersey Boys and Phantom of the Opera to come in then, but they cut them down to like 90 minutes.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. So they would cut the so it would be the full show, but they would cut it down to a certain time, and then they'd have the show run.
Yes, a lot of the casinos, they don't want people they want people out in the casinos gambling. And they figured they only had a 90-minute attention span. So the show would run for 90 minutes. That way they could get the people back out and into the casinos gambling.
That's a really interesting tactic.
It's not your typical, theater.
Yeah.
So back then, that was in the early 2000s. That was 2003. And they were calling Vegas Broadway West at the time. Because several shows then came in on the heels of Mamma Mia. We had musical We Will Rock You, same kind of book musical as Mamma Mia on the music of Queen, and then Jersey Boys and Phantom of the Opera. We had Hairspray for a while, so there was quite a few.
Yeah. So how many shows come through Vegas or how many shows did you do in one city? Was it multiple times you went around, or was it just once?
Well, depending on the tour, Les Miserables, I was on that tour for 3 years. So we would go back around generally every other year.
Okay. Nice. And that would depend on the show, right? And how long that show would run. You'd come back again if you needed to.
Yes. The whole goal, and I mean, touring's gotten a lot different than back in the 90s. You had what we call your A cities and your B cities. Your A cities typically did first national tours, and they would sit for anywhere from 2 to 3 months to longer. My husband is a head electrician, and he was on Les Miserables, and in 3 years, he moved the show once.
Oh wow! That's crazy. Just one. That's really interesting because you think it would go multiple. You think it, keep moving to each city, but then sometimes that gets delayed. It sounds like.
Well, back in the day, there was more than one tour.
Okay,
we had a first national, then we had bus and truck, and then we had 2 bus and trucks because they had to capitalize on how popular the show was at the time.
That makes sense. So when you were doing merch, were you able to see the show and then come out for the merch, selling merch, and then go back to see the show, or was it just the merch?
No, I could. When the show started, if I wanted to, I could go in and watch the show and just stand in the back, and then come out for intermission and go back in. Joseph, because they have the big mega mix at the end, I would go in all the time so I could learn the moves. Same thing with Mamma Mia. I would be dancing in the back of the house to the music.
That's me on every single show I do tech for too. It's like up in the tech booth just jamming.
Well, and as I said before, I can't dance, so it was pretty awkward. So I would hide out in the back.
Yeah, I'm just blending in the audience. Just no one back here.
Nope, exactly.
That's so funny. You're also a member of IATSE, your local 702 in Vegas. How'd you get involved with that union?
Well, luckily, it's very difficult to get in with the unions. I met my husband. We were originally on Miss Saigon in 1994, but we were both dating other people. In 1998, Les Miserables went to Canada for 6 months. Luckily, because of me being head of merchandise, I got to go. And my husband, they had him come out to run the lighting And my name was the only name he kind of recognized from all the cast and crew. So we became friendly and chatting and talking, and wound up dating and getting engaged and getting married. Well, he belonged to the union in New Hampshire, Local 195. And it's a very, very small local up there. And they needed, for diversification, they didn't have a lot of women. So we were able to get me in Local 195. Unfortunately, I didn't be able to use my card until I came to Vegas, and I was able to transfer my card. And I took open union calls here in Vegas for stagehand work, setting up conventions, meetings, and that kind of thing as a carpenter. And I got lucky enough to find out about a show that was opening, and I got on the installation crew. And I was able to get picked up as a prop person.
That sounds awesome. So how do you? So you kind of explained how unions work. So you have a card, right? Like a union card.
Yes, you have a union card, and then you get skill sets. Okay. You have to take, different classes. The first is the general carpenter. And that was 2 weeks of training, and you learn how to tie knots, you learn all kinds of different carpentry skills, but you learn AV, you learn lighting, all kinds of just a basic broad range. So most of the time when you have a carpenter's card, you are like pushing cases or laying decking, that kind of thing. You can be doing some electrical. So you cannot be called for a job that you don't have the card for.
Okay. So you can choose what card you want to go for, right? So
oh, you can have many cards. You could have carpenter, you could have electrician. I also have my forklift certification. So I can drive a forklift or a scissor lift or a boom lift. So I have that skill set. So sometimes I would get a call for a forklift operator.
Okay. And then they would call you and say, we need you for this, and you would go in for that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Sometimes you can kind of piggyback a little bit. An acquaintance of mine, she's an electrician. I came as a carp on a call. My carp was finished, but she was way behind, and I said, hey, do you want me to jump in? You can be requested. It's called a letter of request for any position because the client is requesting you. So I've been called on a letter of request for electricians, even though I don't have the electrician card.
Okay. But so you have some knowledge, but not like the full. I mean, you could do some electrician stuff then. Okay.
Yeah. So
nice.
I mean, I can hang lights, I can focus, I can do a lot of things. It's just that I didn't take the time to go through the union classes to get that classification card.
Okay, got it. Well, and then the union had these classes, and you can take them, and you can work your way to any. Okay, got it. That's cool that they give you the opportunity to build your craft, or go into anything you would want to go into.
Well, but you also have to understand that it's like 2 or 3 weeks, and it's like 8 to 4, and you're not paid.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah, well, it's training for the real thing,
So it's a crapshoot, yeah. And of course, because of COVID now, everything has been dead for a year. I mean, entertainment's going to be one of the last to come back.
So the union card, do they expire after a certain time, and you have to go back and get your certification?
Well, your union card is only good for 1 year. You have to pay dues and your fees for your stamps every year.
Okay.
So, and there's also an apprentice card or a full member, and you have to be sponsored, and generally you have to work so many hours to get your A-list card, which is and they start in rotation. When they call people, they'll start with the A-list people and then work their way down.
Okay. Yeah. So, what would you say the pros and cons are of being in IOTC or any union?
I would say, the pros are you're definitely protected. You definitely make more money. I have worked for a company before doing union work that was not union. You didn't need a union card. Mm-hmm. So they don't pay as much. But again, with the union, you're paying your dues. Not only that, a union takes a small, portion of your salary.
Okay. So that would be the con possibly is they take a tiny bit from your paycheck each show.
They take a tiny bit, yes. For insurance, you have to work so many hours and maintain so many hours for health insurance.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's good that you're covered, so accident on the job, whatever, you're good there.
Well, accident on the job would be workman's comp.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, that's covered under workman's comp. They have to do that. So I never did have insurance through the union because I never worked enough hours.
Got it. And you have to keep track of your hours and turn them in somehow to get credit?
No, the union tracks it. When you go to a job, you sign in and you have to sign a paper and everything, and you sign your time in and out, and that's put in electronically. So it's kept track of.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So as a member of the union, do you spend a lot of time working on conventions or other shows or?
Well, it's not really other shows because other shows get their crew and then that's pretty much set. When Jubilee was open, they always needed what they called Joe Extra, and it was an open rotation. And I did work 2 nights, I think it was, as Joe Extra. But otherwise, it's conventions and meetings, all the ballrooms, and like I said, it's setting up staging, setting up trusses with lighting and electrical and sound and running cables and pushing boxes. A lot of it's pushing the boxes because you have to go off the truck, back to the loading dock, and the casinos are notorious with their hallways and everything. You may be walking a mile just to move one case, and then you got to go back and do it again.
Yeah, it sounds like very demanding work being in a union in general.
It is. One of the things we say is if you are half an hour early, you're early. If you're 15 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late.
Yeah, I have heard that one a few times. That's a good rule of thumb to keep in mind.
So that's programmed in, pretty well.
Yeah.
And especially when you're trying to find some of these rooms and they're in the back hallways and stuff and you don't know these casinos, it is terrifying.
Yeah, because you need to get this equipment, to this place, and you're like, where am I, right? New territory to me.
Well, and unfortunately, not all of them have colored stripes on the ground to tell you which goes where.
Yeah. I just need to Google it real quick.
I didn't bring my M&Ms to leave a trail.
Exactly. Well, that's so. Okay, would you recommend like high schoolers or people who want to go into technical theater to join a union?
High schoolers, unfortunately, probably would not get in.
Okay.
Your better bet is to try for some of the labor companies that are non-union. That way you can gain experience doing that. Also, working in community theater is a great platform. You'll get a lot of experience there as well. That and its connections. A lot of it's networking and connections.
Exactly. And so with a union, are you limited to like some shows that are only union shows that you can work?
Technically, it depends on where you're at. Nevada is a right to work state.
Okay.
So they cannot discriminate against you for working in non-union shows. Some states, though, you cannot. You cannot
Okay.
take a non-union gig if you are a union member.
Okay. Yeah. See, there's always other like in between stuff that like I like had no knowledge of.
It's a tricky line.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
each union will kind of guide you and tell you. But like I said, unfortunately for high school or college, getting in the union, unless you have a family member or somebody
Okay.
you know really well that will sponsor you, you probably won't get in.
Okay, got it. So it'd be better to get experience and then try later, or keep that in the back of your repertoire and try to get in eventually.
Yes. Yes. I actually, when I was on hiatus from a tour, I went back to community college and I took theater. I took a stagecraft class and I hung lights for one of the college productions. So, the best thing, I've always felt that I learn more from doing it than I do from reading a book.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
One of the favorite quotes now lately is, it's when paperwork meets reality. And so you can read it on paperwork, but until you do it in reality, you have the disconnect.
Exactly. Well, and technical theater is hands-on, and right, that's how you learn, hands-on. So, booking is a way to learn.
Definitely. When we were touring, we used to go into schools and we would do kind of like career talks. And my favorite would be when you go into the grade schools, and I would tell the kids, okay, you're only allowed 2 suitcases. What are you going to put in there? Oh, well, I'm going to put my toys and I'm going to put this, I'm going to put that. And I said, well, what about clothing? Well, but what about your toothpaste? That's got to go in.
Yeah.
So, kids and people, when they travel, they don't think of your whole life as 2 suitcases. Now, I was fortunate with having my own truck because I could basically take kind of whatever I wanted, and a lot of times I certainly did.
Yeah.
But it's just like the kids. I would say, okay, so you're hungry and you want to eat something, what do you do? And they're like, well, we'd go into the kitchen and get a snack. I'm like, you're in a hotel, there's no kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you tell, like you said, all these things that you wouldn't think of, when you're on tour, right? And then you're on tour and like what do I do, right? And you gotta be prepared for those situations. It sounds like.
Yo, definitely. And now, I mean, back when I toured, the internet was just starting, but there was no Google, there was no cell phones. Try to find a restaurant open on a Sunday between shows in a small town, and you have no transportation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the first things I used to do, believe it or not, was I would take the telephone book and I would take the telephone book and leave the telephone book in my truck.
Yeah. All the numbers you need, like, I don't know, see, it's like telephone books are, a thing of the past, right? But it, in your case, it was really useful, right? Because you had the numbers and, call up the, local hotel or whatever and...
I had the numbers, and the beginning of the telephone books always said what was in that town of historical interest or sightseeing. So I would read that, and because the nice thing with merch, I had my days free. I didn't have to be at work till 6:30 at night.
Yeah.
So I could go out. I called it a permanent vacation. I just went sightseeing all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, it sounds like with at least with merch, at least back in the day, it seemed like there's a lot of free time between shows because you have evenings or. Wait, did you have matinee shows that you had to go to, or do?
Only on Saturdays and Sundays.
Okay.
So Tuesday through Friday night, it was one show, usually 7 or 8 o'clock, and then Saturday and Sunday was matinee evening.
Okay.
So you can forget Saturday and Sunday, but during the week with merchandising, it was great.
Yeah,
I didn't have rehearsals. Yeah, I didn't have tech. I didn't have rehearsals. I didn't have any of it.
Yeah, it sounds like such a nice schedule to have, right? Because you're just like I'm like it feels like you're not even working, right? Because you always said vacation, right? Because you have shows in the evening and not the rest of the day, so you could do whatever.
Well, plus I would work an hour before the show. During the show, I had free time. I could go in and watch the show. I could read. I could take college classes. Then I worked a 20-minute intermission. Then I had another free time during the second act. And then I worked half an hour to 45 minutes after the show, and I was done.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like merch is a place to be then, right? Like,
merch is fantastic.
It sounds like a ball, just like no stress of worrying about. I mean, like I'm guessing there was stress of worrying about stuff, right? Like orders and all that, probably.
Oh, shipments. Yeah, you had to worry about shipments. You did have to put them in the truck when we, back then. I mean, nowadays, your booth and all your merchandise is in hampers and that, and they ride on the semis.
Yeah.
So it's like everything would just show up in the lobby and I'd just set it up and go. And then at the end, I'd pack it up and leave and it magically appeared in the next city.
Yeah. See, so it's kind of amazing how far technology has come for one, just like, the industry has come, right? Because, it's just crazy.
But the only bad thing is now I didn't have the freedom between cities. Because before I had to drive. So, I mean, I got to see some amazing countryside. I would stop and visit things when I could. Have you ever taken a 30-foot truck on a Washington State ferry?
What? That's crazy. Yeah. No, that's ridiculous. What? Like the whole entire truck?
The whole entire truck.
What? That's crazy.
I kind of used it as my personal transportation. I could actually parallel park it.
Oh, wow. Well, so you had to get a license for driving the truck then, too, right?
I do. You don't have to. But because we are actually considered for-hire drivers, because I'm working for a company, I have a CDL license, which is a commercial driver's license, but I do have an air brake restriction. Okay. But also back then, you had to stop at way stations, and you had to fill out truck driver logbooks. Okay.
Yeah. So it was cool to drive a truck, right? But you had all those extra things, and you still had to do.
Well, and nowadays, I mean, before the books, we did it by hand. Now, because of electronics, it's done electronically, and you can't fudge the electronics like you could your own, hand.
Yeah, exactly. You just dial it in.
You're only allowed to drive for a certain amount of time, and then you have to have a minimum rest area time. So, yeah. So. It was a blast. I miss it. And I have friends all over the country now because of it. Yeah. Some that have become best friends, and some that I still keep in contact with 25 years later, 30 years later.
Yeah. It sounds like it was a great experience for you, and you learned a lot from it, and it seemed like a great experience overall.
It was. I mean, theater, like they say, there's no people like show people.
Yeah, exactly. That's very well said. If you could go back to high school and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
If I would give a piece of advice, number one, surprisingly enough, I would say, try and remember retirement. A lot of people in the theater industry don't think of that.
Mm-hmm.
And like performers, it's a short career. You're making
Yeah.
a lot of money if you get on a tour. Bank some of it. I
Yeah.
kind of wish I had, but enjoy it. It's a great, great industry to be part of and have fun.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure talking with you, Debbie.
Oh, pleasure's all mine, Ethan.
Thank you so much, and see you guys next week on Tech Talk with Ethan.